Hello, everybody. Could somebody give me a thumbs up? You can hear me? Great. That's always a good start. It's not really good if all you can see is me go. I'm wondering what on earth I'm talking about. I am so thrilled to see so many people here. Not that many years ago, everybody would have said, oh, data governance, isn't that really boring? And yet there's people standing at the back. So that is absolutely brilliant. So you're all here to find out 6 principles for successful data governance. And I can promise you it's not the silver bullet, but it'll give you a really good starter if you're just starting out with data governance. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicola Askham. I'm known as the Data Governance Coach, and I help organisations understand and manage their data better. Now, I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now, which is really scary, and I've worked with some really big corporates and large public sector organisations, and help them become more efficient, solve problems, and to be honest, remain more relevant in this increasingly digital world that we're in. And I think it's fair to say that when I first started doing data governance, I didn't do it right. So I'm not one of these people that's standing up here saying I Googled it and I can come and reproduce everything and tell you everything I've done. I'm actually telling you the things I've learned mostly the hard way by doing it wrong, and I've still got the scars to prove it. So everything I tell you now comes from my direct experience of trying this multiple times over the years. So I love trying to help people do data governance for themselves. I learned very early on that yes, I am a consultant, can't pretend I'm not, but I don't think consultants should do data governance for you. I think you should do data governance, but I get that you don't always know where to start. So I focus an awful lot on getting advice and training and giving people the skills they need to do this properly. So that's all about me. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn or my website, I write blogs, I do videos, I do podcasts, whichever way you like to learn about data governance, I probably do it somewhere. So feel free to follow me and get more free advice. So, is data governance easy? So put your hand up if you think that you've got some data governance challenges at the moment with trying to get your data governance due. Hey, vast majority of people in the room. So, we've only got half an hour. I don't have time to ask each and every one of you what your biggest challenge is, but I'll be honest, there are quite a few of them, and I don't want to depress you because we'll be realistic about this. Doing data governance is hard, and I can't pretend any other way, but it is doable, and you will be able to deliver real value for your organization. So don't give up. It's just worth being aware of the challenges and work out how you're going to mitigate them and how you're going to get around them. That's the biggest thing. And hopefully, I will give you some tips today that will help you with that. So let's move on to from the negative things and think about the things that actually really help you. What's going to make a difference? Well, over all the years of doing this, I've kind of come up with 6 things that I think that if you bear these in mind, you will be able to plan your data governance initiative in a way that will really increase the likelihood of it being successful. Now, this is where perhaps I ought to put my glasses on so I don't say them in the wrong order or anything, but I've boiled it down to 6, and I should say, feel free to take as many photos as you like, but I will give you a link at the end of this where you can get the slides and some more information as well. So that's no problem at all. So I boiled it down to 6, and that wasn't easy, but I started off with number 1 is opportunities. You've got to know why you're doing data governance. We don't do it because it's best practice or Nicola said so. You've really got to understand what it is. I think the next one is making sure you've got the capability. So it comes back to what I was just saying. So many people end up doing data governance because somebody in their organization goes, we're going to do data governance, you can do it. And they're going, I don't know what data governance is. And they're quite often starting from 0. And to be fair, that's what I was 20 years ago. So it's making sure you've got at least some capability and understanding of what you're trying to do. That will make it easier. Custom build, making sure that your approach is right for your organization. Above all else, you've got to be simple in your approach, because if you overcomplicate this, it is never going to work. This sounds really silly. The next one is all about launching it, because I've seen far too many people over the years who have spent a considerable amount of time and effort designing the perfect data governance framework. And then they just kind of say, here you go. And surprisingly, the business don't do it. So we actually have to launch this. We actually have to make it happen. So that is a really important principle. You mustn't just think you can design it and they will come, because I can tell you from experience, they won't. And then finally, does your organization stand still and never change year to year? I doubt it very much. So why do you think your data governance framework will? So this isn't a once and done. We have to constantly be reviewing our approach to data governance and evolving it as our company evolves and does different things. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, what's she going to talk about the rest of the time? She's already done the 6 principles. So I'm actually going to go into a little bit more detail on just 3 of them, because in half an hour I can't go into loads of detail about all of them. But I have written a blog which goes into all 6 in a little bit more details, and that is on my website, and on the link I'll share with you at the end. So we're just going to look at the 3, the opportunities, the custom build, and the simplicity. It's hard to choose 3 that are more important than others, but I think they're marginally more important than the others, so I thought we'd spend a bit more time talking about them. So, at the end of this session, I want you to go away with 3 clear messages. And the first one is that you have to get your organization viewing data as an asset. The second one is you have to have a clear vision for why you're doing data governance and what you want to get out of it. And I'm harping on about the simple side of things again. I'm really trying to get this message home. You must have a simple approach to data governance for it to be successful. So we're going to go into these in a little bit more detail in the time that we've got left. So, data as an asset. Okay, so I really like interactive sessions. I don't like just talking at you, but it's a bit hard in a venue like this, so I can't ask you questions. Well, I will. I'll let you ask me questions at the end, and I'll put headphones on to hear you. So I just have to keep getting you to raise your hands to make sure you're still listening to me. But who here thinks that their organization views data as an asset? Oh, well, it's encouraging. It's increasing, but I'd say that was still only about a quarter of you put your hands up. So well done. Those of you done, you're already making huge progress. But what we've got to do is for everybody else in the room, get everybody else thinking that data is an asset. So one of the things I often ask my clients when I'm first starting working with them, when they tell me data isn't an asset, I say, so does your organization have buildings of any kind, offices or factories, or I've been doing a lot of work with universities, so we've got university buildings, and they all go, yes. I said, do you think that your buildings are an asset? Nobody even hesitates. They don't think about it. They just say, yes, they really are. Now, because you view your buildings as an asset, do you have a team that goes around and checks on them? They might be called facilities or maintenance. And generally, you don't wait for your building to fall down or holes to appear in walls. Somebody's checking things and maintaining them. Sadly, this isn't the approach we tend to take with data until we start doing data governance, because we don't think of data really as an asset. The vast majority of people that I've spoken to over the years almost think of data as a necessary evil, part of doing their job, the bit that makes doing their job harder or waste them time. And we've got to change that. And this is one of the biggest hurdles that we have to get over. And this is why we mustn't do data governance just for data governance sake. We first got to convince our organization that their data is their asset, and they should manage it in the same way we manage our buildings. And that is really, really important. So another time for you to raise your hands. Who here is treating data governance as a project? Oh, not too many. See, things are improving every time I ask these questions and things. And everybody, for those of you that didn't turn around, they're kind of going, so I think the people that were doing it know that they probably shouldn't be. So, does data governance ever finish? I hope not. I hope at some point it gets so embedded into your organization that you don't have to go around shouting about it all the time. But I'll be honest, that's going to take a really long time. So we're going to have to really work hard at it in the short term. And I think it's fair to say that you probably need a project-like thing in the early stages to design and implement it for the first time. But I would really, really resist calling it a project if you can possibly avoid it. Because what do projects do? They end. And I cannot tell you how many times over the years people have said to me, I'll be so glad when this project is finished and you go away and stop bugging me and I can go back to normal. And you go, no, this is the new normal. We're trying to change how you manage your data. There isn't a go back to normal. This is why I don't like it being a project. Now, I'm sure if you're all interested in data governance, you watch all the data governance things on LinkedIn. How many times have you seen people post saying data governance is not a sprint, it's a marathon? And I go, But that's still wrong. Yes, a marathon takes a lot longer, but it still finishes. Data governance never finishes. It's a culture shift. It's a mindset that we're bringing into our organization. And we really, really need to do that. And the only way we're going to do that is to work out why we're doing data governance. It comes back to these opportunities. Why are you doing data governance? Not for fun, not just because somebody in your senior executives woke up one day and went, there's a lot of chatter about this data governance thing, I think we ought to do it. You're doing it because there's some real genuine benefits for your organization. And if you start doing that, then you can get away from that mindset about it's a project and we might finish and get there one day. So it leads on to what I was saying about the things. It's really important to have a clear vision of why you're doing data governance. Because if you're not, somebody is going to close down your program. And I speak as somebody who has suffered from that many times in the early days. I would be told things like, well, it was flavor of the month for a while, but there's other things and we need the resource of the data governance team. There's always going to be something else. So you've got to prove that what you do is absolutely foundational for everybody else to be successful. So it really is all about working out these opportunities, working out why your organization is doing data governance. Now, some of you might work in regulated industries and your regulator might be asking you to do it. And that's not a bad place to start, but I'd always be looking bigger. So I would always recommend that you go back to your corporate strategy, have a look at that and try to understand, in order to meet that strategy and your organization's objectives, is your data good enough at the moment? What else do you need to do to actually achieve that? So I would really recommend you do that. So, but above all else, be really, really clear that you know why you're doing data governance, and don't waste time doing what I did in the early days, preaching about it's best practice and we should all do it and live happily ever after. It didn't end well, I can tell you. So you don't want to repeat that. You just want to be very clear and focused. And focus on the data that's the most valuable to your business, and it's the data that your senior executives care about. Anything else is a waste of time, particularly in the early days. You might get to that stage that you can go back and fix the niggles that have been bugging you for years at a later stage, but really look at the big picture and work out what's valuable to your organization first. So second, we've got custom build. I can't tell you how many LinkedIn messages and emails I get from somebody going, could you tell me the best standard data governance framework? I get so many. I actually have a standard answer, so I don't have to keep typing it. So I don't think you should use a standard data governance framework. There are a few out there, but who here works for a standard company that's the same as every other company? Surprisingly, nobody puts their hands up at that one. So why would you think that a standard framework that's been designed for definitely not your company at any rate, I don't know what they designed it for, is going to work for you? So it's really important that what you do is tailor it to your needs. So the best way I can think to illustrate this is if you think of ordering a cup of coffee these days. Now, I currently have some issues which mean that I can't have caffeine and I can't have milk. That's a bit of a problem for a coffee lover, really. And if you think about 20 years ago, I could go to a coffee shop and I'd go, right, I can't have dairy and I can't have caffeine, but can I have a coffee, please? They probably would have just laughed at me and told me I could have had a herbal tea. That was all they were going to say. But this morning, twice, I've queued up and say, can I have a decaf oat milk latte, please? Okay, my husband tells me it's not really coffee, but I can have a coffee that's as close to coffee as I can drink at the moment. And it suits me, it makes me happy, it makes me feel that I've got what I needed. So you've got to take that same kind of approach with coffee that we all do. I bet if any one of you queued up in the same queue at the cafe with me earlier, you would have ordered your slight variation on what it is you like or what you can and can't have. And we're all really happy. And we've got to do the same with our data governance framework. We've got to design something that works for you. Now, I would be lying if I said to you that the number of data governance frameworks that I've helped people design over the years haven't had some similarities. Of course they have. But it's the subtleties that make it right for that organization, and that's what makes it successful. So, really would urge you not to get distracted by a standard data governance framework. But I did just think, just for the interest of seeing, has anybody here tried to use one of the standard data governance frameworks? There's a few hands up. Any good? few shaking heads. Thank you for backing me up. That's good. They're just not right. I had a client a few years ago, got me in to help them because they'd been doing data governance 2 years and it wasn't going very well. They were using a standard data governance framework. And I worked through it with them, and we worked out that this kind of standard framework described almost like the end point, the mature state when you're doing everything. There were some gaps in it that I think they'd missed, but the problem was they were asking you to do things that were really mature that you might do 2-3 years from now. This company was beating themselves up that data governance wasn't going very well because they were trying to do things that they weren't ready for. So by all means, if you've seen the standard data governance frameworks, look at it for inspiration, but don't feel wedded to it. You do not have to do everything on there, and feel free to challenge it and say, this isn't right for us. That doesn't fit our structure, our culture, or how we operate in our organization. So that is really, really important. Just keep an eye on the time. And then I just had to say it again, because it really, really is important. We need a simple approach to data governance. If you make it really, really complicated, it will not happen. It really, really won't. I'd ask you to think about it. If you've got to that stage where you've designed a data governance framework, how complicated is it? Can you simplify it? Can you make it easier? Because it really is vital that you do. Because the more complicated you make it, the less likely anybody is to follow it. I've had a few pieces of work where some large consultancies have gone in, and they've obviously been paid by the number of PowerPoint slides they deliver. And, they've been given, sorry, I'm a consultant, I'm allowed to say this, but they've been, and I'm presented with, here's our 100-page PowerPoint deck of our data governance framework, but it's not working. And I go, well, the first thing is it's off-putting before you've even turned to the first slide, isn't it? You go, whoa! So you can always add detail, and you should add detail as you evolve, but really, really start simple. Think about how off-putting complex things are. And the best way I could think of to describe this to you is watching TV these days. How hard is it? So I don't watch much TV, I don't have much time. When we do, I let my husband have control of the remote. It's just generally easier that way. So that's quite nice and simple. He knows what we tend to watch together. On the rare occasion he goes out and I get to watch something, it's a nightmare. Think back to when I was a kid, and some of you are too young, you won't remember this, but there was only 3 channels on the TV. We had the TV times, and of the evening, Mum or Dad would look and they'd go, oh, we're watching that one, or we're not watching anything. And we'd sit down and watch the television. Now, my husband goes out and I go, oh, perhaps I could watch a costume drama, or shall I watch a rom-com? Well, and I go, right, okay, so I probably waste a little while thinking about what it is I want to watch. And then I think of all the various options I've got, and Virgin or Freeview, or I wonder if I could use my sister's Disney Plus subscription. And you kind of go through all these things. I usually get to about 45 minutes in and I go, you know what, this is too much effort. I haven't even started watching anything. And people get like that with data governance. We want to do something that is so simple that it doesn't blow their minds, that they're just happy to do it. And I think that was a huge mistake I made in the early days. I would go in and say to everybody, we need to do everything, and it's this big. And they do, very senior people would ask me very politely to leave their offices and say, no, it's too much, too big, that's just scary. We mustn't make data governance scary. It must be simple, and hopefully I've convinced you of that. So that is kind of a whistle-stop tour of the 6 of them. As I say, I've written a blog that goes into all 6 in a bit more detail, so please, if you're interested, go and read that. To make it easy for you, you can either do that link or you can do the QR code. That will take you to a page on my website which has the slides from this, a link to that blog. It also has a free data governance checklist to give you some clues. So if you're just starting, you can actually start to get your head around some tasks and things you'd like to do. And while I think of it, so I don't forget, I have only a very small number. If you really are just starting and are not sure what roles and responsibilities, I've got a little booklet about data governance roles and responsibilities. I've got a few with me if you want to come and grab them at the end. Save me carrying them home again. That would be nice, thank you. But that's available digitally on my website as well. So I rushed through that quickly because what I wanted to do was to give you a chance to ask questions. Now, we've only got 10 minutes, but I can answer as many as I can. So if you have a question, if you raise your hand, and the lovely chap at the back will bring a microphone, I think, if he's not being distracted by somebody. And I will put the headphones on so I can actually hear the questions. Are they bringing a mic? They're too busy having a meeting at the back. Right, who had their hand up? It's not turned on, I can't hear.
Me neither. Oh, no, now I can. So one of the problems I have is that being a data steward, let alone a data owner, is more often than not a full-time job. It's something that people need to do next to their quote-unquote actual job, which leads to a bit of resistance or unclarity. Like, people just don't want to do it. They feel that it's something extra that they're suddenly told they're being told to do it. Mm-hmm. So how do you work around that? How do you get people on board?
No, that's a good point, and I think it's something I've seen a lot, and I'm sure a few nodding heads as you were asking that. So I would say that the big point with that is trying to get people to understand that, yes, in the initial phases, being a data steward or a data owner will take more effort over and above your normal day job. We can't get around that. But in the long term, if we do data governance right, their job should get easier. And I've actually kind of worried a few of my clients in the past when I've been at meetings with difficult stakeholders, and I've sat next to their data governance manager, and the stakeholder's gone exactly that. I don't have time for this. I run a busy department. And I always say, well, you know, give us 6 months, and if by that time it has taken you more time and effort to do data governance than the benefits you get back, then we're doing data governance wrong. And you may come and beat up the data governance manager and tell him to change the data governance framework. I mean, say the first time I did it, I didn't actually warn the chap, and he went white, then red, then white again. But the principle is true. If you're doing this and making it really onerous and really hard, then you're not doing it right. But if we can start solving some problems, because think about how much time is wasted in your organisation with redoing work, or what I love to call data wrangling, this trying to get data from various sources and fudge it all together, or redoing stuff, or people ringing you up at a really busy time in the month because some key data's missing. If we could eradicate that, you could actually do what you're paid to do. So actually being a data steward and a data owner gives you that possibility to make those changes. So I think it's all about how we sell it and explain it to people, rather than by the way, you're a data steward and here's an extra load of work to do. It's we're actually ultimately going to give you more time to do what your team's supposed to do. So any other questions? There's something. Oh, sorry. Come to you next.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
So with the popular data governance frameworks, one of the things that come with it is stewardship groups, councils, committees, meetings. And one of the things I get from my clients is data governance is about sitting in meeting rooms, or data governance is about having more meetings in your diary. How do you balance that out? We need to get people to talk to each other so that they can make informed decisions, because we don't want decisions to be made in silos. But how do you balance
cut
that?
out.
Can you still hear me now?
It's died. I can't hear. I heard the first part of the question. Can you all hear me? So I heard the first part of the question. So while they're sorting out the mic that's not working,
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Oh, do you think the mic? Says the battery gone on my headphones? Oh, thank you. So do you want to try it?
Yeah, I'll try again.
Okay. Oh, so thank you. Well done. Working out, it was my batteries.
So I talked about the committees and the committees and the councils and the groups, and it's important that we get people to talk together to make decisions, because the idea is we don't want them to make decisions in silos. But how do you balance out that enabling them or putting in place structures for them to be able to make decisions without having a million councils or 1,000 councils and groups?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. One of my clients even sent me an urgent email yesterday saying, my company's just announced a restructure, and they're saying we've got too many committees and forums, and they're saying we've got to cancel it, and I was just re-energising the data governance committee. I think you're right, we need them. Particularly, I would say, I would focus on making sure you get the one where you get the most senior people, the data owners together right. When you get to like data stewards, you have a lot more of them, and a lot of them won't be interested in what you're talking about with a small bunch of them. So you don't need to have big meetings with them. Good way to find a way to foster a community, maybe something online, which we're all much better at thanks to the pandemic now, but try and find things like that. But I think with the senior one, it's very important that we have the meeting. But I think what we need to do is make sure that the meetings are valuable, and that includes a lot of planning and prep. We don't wing it. We don't have the data governance committee because we have it monthly anyway, and we just go, well, there's not many updates. We really make sure that there's something to do. And if you haven't got anything to discuss with them, cancel it. And I think you get a lot more respect for actually making sure that you use people's time wisely. The other thing I do quite a lot is look at what other meetings exist in your organization that perhaps you could put data onto so that you're not adding another one to the calendar. So I quite often find if you have an operational risk meeting, that's a good one. Sometimes data protection, it just depends. Sometimes data protection take over and you don't get allowed to talk about data governance, but it depends on each organization. But I would think very much about how can you streamline it? What could you align it with? And it's all, and the more you get people working with each other outside of the meetings, the less you have to have the meetings. So when I first start, I would have a data governance committee meeting with my data owners once a month. But as soon as they start engaging, because to begin with, they don't do anything until you have the next meeting. So we don't want to make the meetings too far apart early on. But aim to go for once a quarter. Tell them that you're aiming to go for once a quarter as soon as they start doing what you need them to do outside of the meetings. So like wave that carrot and start just elongating it. When you feel like they're doing what you need them to do without constant chasing, make it 6 weeks, then make it every 2 months. and just keep pulling out. That would be my best advice. So we've probably got time for one very quick question. I think there's the gentleman here. Oh, I think we're not going to manage to get all the questions done.
Hi, hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I was sat here thinking I'll have to ask a question, and a colleague of mine who I texted all my notes to wanted to ask a question, so I think that'll take over. So we talk about data as an asset all the time, but we don't invest enough time, money, people into achieving real stewardship. So money tends to go to all the sort of deliverable stuff, such as, you know, another reporting platform, such as a data catalog, etc. So how do we change our culture?
That's a really good question. Not easily. I wish I could give you one quick answer that goes, just do this, it'll all be perfect. I think it's all about tying back what you're doing with your data to real value in your organization. I think, you know, it's definitely something I was guilty of, is talking about this best practice and we should do it. That's not going to win anybody over. So I think it is finding examples. So I would encourage you to go and find what I call data quality horror stories in your organization. What has gone wrong? Because you've either had poor quality data, or it wasn't available, or it wasn't good, you know, it wasn't there at the right time, you haven't got the right level of granularity, you know, all the kind of problems. Find what they are and start telling people. Because I think the more you explain this to people, they then get it. One of the big things I've noticed is that we have this inbuilt thing that we don't tell the senior stakeholders how bad the data is. We just do it. And what we need to do is start sharing this news. So the second consultancy I work for put me in the Ministry of Defence. And they actually have a phrase for this, which is do not report bad news up the chain of command. And actually, even if, you know, working in corporates, we actually have that, we just don't name it. And I found this is like really weird. And so your senior stakeholders think when they ask for a report, you go to your laptop, you press the big red button, out pops the report, and they go, oh, this is lovely. I spoke to one organisation for a really key KPI for their organisation. There were 4 official different ways of calculating, another 5 unofficial. So when the CEO said, oh, what's the latest, that was an insurer, it was a loss ratio, she just really imagined that somebody would give her this report. But no, in fact, 4 teams did it and spent 2 weeks arguing with each other about why their number was better than somebody else's. And in the end, we agreed a number that bears no relevance. It was just a compromise number that then goes, ta-da, there you go, here's our number. And she just thinks it's really easy. And so what I always encourage you to do as the data governance person is unearth these and start telling them and getting people to start questioning it. Excellent. And then we've finished. We're out of time. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I hope that's helped. Good luck.